What's up everyone, and welcome back to another video. This time I'm just going to be talking, so I won't be showing anything on my car. I want to go through a quick list of the maintenance items that I've done on my personal 335i. I've kept a really extensive list of everything that I've done, just so when it comes time to sell it, which I'm selling it right now, I can just send it directly over to the potential buyer. So it makes my life easier, and it's something I'd recommend for you to do as well. So just to get started, to give a little background about my car, it's a 2008 335 and it had 67,000 miles when I got the car, and the current mileage is about 83,500 right now. So that's the mileage that I've had it. So not even 20,000 miles. The owner before me did the basic maintenance, went to the dealer for everything, and the only other big thing that he had done before I bought the car was 3 of the injectors were replaced. Other than that, there wasn't much on the receipts when I bought the car that kind of stood out to me. So I always do oil changes every 5,000 miles or just before 5,000 miles. So the first maintenance item I did was the oil filter housing and cooler gasket. As you'll see later in the video, I actually had to replace this again, probably from proper installation, but that doesn't matter. It's not super expensive to fix, so it wasn't a big deal. At 71,000 miles, I did NGK one-step coiler spark plugs, and then I also did the Delphi coil packs. This wasn't done because my car was misfiring anything. I just did this as preventative. And you'll notice a lot of this stuff that I've done is preventative maintenance, because I'd rather fix it before it breaks. I have not changed the spark plugs or coil packs once in my entire ownership after I did it at 71,000 miles. At 68,000 miles, I had the water pump and thermostat replaced. Around that same time, I did a walnut blast, which is an intake valve cleaning. This engine gets a lot of carbon buildup because it is direct injection. Traditional fuel injection doesn't have this issue, so you won't have to worry about it, but with the N54, you definitely have to get them cleaned. I'm not exactly sure how often you should do it. So at 75,000 miles, I did D4 ATF transmission fluid, and this was done at the time that I did my clutch and flywheel. I also did the rear main seal, so that was replaced. It wasn't leaking, but while you have the transmission off, it's a smart idea to have the rear main seal replaced. Again, that's a preventative measure, so just something to keep in mind. At 75,000 miles, when I was doing the transmission and rear main seal, so I replaced the clutch and flywheel. The flywheel didn't need to be replaced, but I changed over to a single mass flywheel. I upgraded to the 335 IS clutch because my stock clutch was actually slipping, and I was only on MHD stage 2 at the time. Most people's clutches slip when they add E85 because of the extra torque, but mine slipped pretty soon, so it was definitely time to replace it. Next up, at 80,000 miles, I did 3 Index 12 injectors. Mine were leaking pretty bad. There's actually one that was leaking worse than the other 2. I decided to do Bank 2 because they were Index 11s. People still reported issues with that revision, so I replaced those, and then the first 3 cylinders, so Bank 1 has Index 7 still. So it's Index 7s and Index 12s, and it's been running perfectly ever since. And then at about 82,000 miles, I did a huge service, and this was done at SSR Performance, my shop that I recommend to everyone. The main reason I went in is because my oil pan gasket was leaking really bad, and then a few days before I actually dropped my car off for the appointment, I noticed that the oil filter housing gasket on the front of the engine was also leaking, and it was leaking onto all the belts. So obviously that's a big issue. You don't want oil on rubber belts as it kind of degrades them down, and they could actually slip off too. So for this service, I did the oil pan gasket, oil filter housing gasket replaced. I did a whole drive belt kit. The cylinder head to thermostat housing had oil on it, and when oil gets on those rubber hoses, it's not good. So I had that replaced. The thermostat housing to water pump hose was replaced. The water pump to engine inlet hose was replaced. The upper radiator hose actually had a small leak, so that was replaced. And obviously they have to drain the coolant when they do all that stuff, so a full coolant flush is also done. Some other things that I haven't really mentioned that you may want to consider: tires, alignments, obviously oil changes. Those can kind of add up depending on how much you drive your car. The thing that I've done most recently was the brake rotors and brake pads. I upgraded them to Brakenetic rotors and Hawk HPS 5.0 pads. This was done because I wanted a little bit more stopping power, and I like the look of the slotted rotors, so I decided to change those out. I probably could have gone a little bit longer, but the pads were getting pretty thin, so that's another thing that I changed. And if you drive your car pretty hard, you're definitely going to want to change those pretty quickly. That's about everything for my car, and I've been pretty lucky not to have to deal with high pressure fuel pump problems. That hasn't been a problem with me yet at all. I also haven't been on ED5 yet, so that could be a reason. The other big thing that I haven't had to deal with is turbos. My car only has 83,000 miles, like I mentioned, so my turbos are still really healthy and they boost properly, don't have any wastegate issues, no rattle. If my car was over 100,000 miles, that may be a different story, but currently they are perfect. Depending on what car you own, that may seem like a lot of stuff done, or it may not seem like much. If you also own an N54, then that won't sound like much to you. It kind of just sounds like normal stuff. But if you own a Honda, that probably sounds like a lot. And I will mention that the price tag on all this stuff is thousands of dollars. I don't have the exact number, and I also get discounts from the shops that I work with. It's not entirely accurate as to what it would be for you. It also depends on where you live, what shop you go to, whether you could do the labor yourself. I didn't do it because I didn't have access to tools or garage space to do it myself. I always work with shops to install and do all my maintenance. I'd say this is about probably $6,000 in maintenance if you go through shops. This would be way less if there was no labor involved, or you were doing the labor yourself and you just bought the parts. The price really adds up quickly because BMW parts are extremely expensive. The injectors, just 3 of them, were $750. The labor for the oil pan gasket was pretty crazy because the whole front subframe has to come down, which, as you can imagine, takes quite a lot of effort to do. The water pump and thermostat was about $850, so super expensive. I decided to make this video because I always have a ton of people on Instagram messaging me and kind of asking what should they expect because they want to get into a 335i. This video should show you a good idea of what to expect. What I always tell people is these cars have depreciated a ton. You know, a lot of these cars were around $40,000 brand new, and you can get yours for about $10,000 now. But what I like to tell people is that the car may be cheap and the car may have depreciated, but the labor and the maintenance cost is exactly the same as if the car is brand new. Labor is super expensive on a BMW because it's very specialized and you have to know quite a lot about them to wrench on them. If this is not something you're willing to deal with, I'd recommend just not getting a BMW. It can get stressful if you don't have a ton of money and you don't want to be spending thousands of dollars on maintenance stuff. Most N54 owners would tell you that it's worth it, and I definitely think it is. I think it's a great car. You just have to be aware that they are still expensive to maintain, even if they're really cheap to buy. If you're still interested in getting one thing I'd recommend is make sure you can work on the car yourself. About half of these things that I've listed you can easily do yourself and not go to a shop for. I love working with shops and I always promote them, but the labor can get pretty crazy sometimes. These cars are definitely meant for people that like working on them. You'll save a lot of money if you do work on it yourself, so that's what I recommend. If I were to do it all over again, I'd definitely do all of it myself. That does it for all the maintenance stuff that I've had to go through. It's been a blast owning this car, but the maintenance is a pain to deal with, so make sure you keep that in mind. I hope this video helps some of you get a better idea of what to expect. If you have any stories of anything that's gone terribly wrong on your N54 or any crazy bill that you've had to pay just to get it back up and running, comment below and let me know what it is, because I'd love to hear some stories. If you like these videos, definitely consider subscribing. It kind of tells me that people are enjoying everything that I'm putting out. I think I'm going to be making a lot more videos coming soon. I am in the process of getting a new car, so that will definitely motivate me to make more videos. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.